Now, if I was planning really well, I would have a song right about now so I could get my breath back. But no, I'm just kidding. I've been doing that song for so many years. That's one I can do. All right, so our gospel today is one of those that I just love because we've got Jesus sitting there. And who does he choose? He's already chosen some smelly old fishermen. And this time he chooses a tax collector. Now, how many people just love it when the IRS calls you and says, hello, this is the IRS? You go, oh, good, I want to talk to these people, right? Okay, so here we had this disciple who is a tax collector. And Jesus goes up to him and says, come and follow me. And he goes. He doesn't question. He didn't say, just a minute, let me go to the bathroom. He goes and follows Jesus. And then Jesus comes and has dinner that night, and he invites the tax collector, and he invites these other people, and he invites sinners. Gives us hope, huh? Maybe we could sit with Jesus too. So this was a meal that changed people's lives, and I want to share with you a meal that has changed my life and a meal that changed my youngest son's life, Luke. So back in the late 1980s, I was working on a substance abuse counseling certificate through the University of Houston, and I needed some field work. And so I was given this woman who was about my age, and that is about where the similarities stopped. She lived in Richmond, Rosenberg, and I lived in Sugar Land at the time. So I took down Highway 90 to go see her. And at that point, I don't know if it still does it, but you take 90 down and you go underneath that overpass and you pop back up, and there's that big plant right there that makes cotton oil, and it smells horrible. And she lived on the side of the tracks where it smelled the worst. And she lived in what had been slave housing and then became tenement farming housing. And it was literally an 8x8 box. So let's measure that out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's how big the whole house was. Her name was Pearlie. Now, Pearlie was one of 21 kids from the same mom. She was number 19. And what I have got to tell you about Pearlie, she stood about maybe 5 feet tall. And Pearlie maybe had 6, maybe 7 original teeth in her mouth. When Pearlie laughed, it came from the soles of her feet up through her knees and into her stomach and up, and it just went and out of her mouth and filled the room, and you saw every single one of those 7 teeth when she laughed. And you could not help but smile. It was the best laugh ever. And I remember one day asking her, Pearlie, what were your brothers and sisters' names? And she said, well, the first 7 were gone when I was born, so I really don't know that I've ever met them. But she proceeded to tell me the rest of her siblings' names. Now, in this 8x8 house that Pearlie lived in, she lived in it with her 2 daughters. One's was, her oldest daughter was 12, and her name was Brandy. And her youngest daughter was 2, and her name was Charlitra. And so the whole reason that I was paired with Pearlie is that she had gone out one night and had gotten a neighbor to come sit with the girls. And the neighbor decided she was tired and wanted to go home, and it was about 2, and Pearlie wasn't back yet. So the neighbor went home and then called the police and said that these children were being left by themselves. And so when Pearlie got home, the police were there and they took the kids away. Now, it wasn't until the next day that they realized that Pearlie was not the person at fault, that the babysitter had left, but they kept Brandy because Texas policy says that children need to live in a house with hot water. And this house did not have hot water. This house had electricity in the 4 rooms that it had. You walked up 3 steps, but you had to walk up on the supports because the bottom ones had fallen through. So you walked up the 3 steps, and then there was a path that you could negotiate to get inside the house. And then there was one, again, we're talking about this big of a space, so about this much was living room, just enough to put a couch that I'm sure was probably built back sometime in the 50s. And then this room had a mat laid on it where Pearlie slept, and this one had a mat laid down for the 2 girls. And then you went into a kitchen that was about 3 by 5, and it had 1 hot plate, and it had a water pipe that came in that was only whatever water was outside. And so she had a bucket, and she would fill that up with a bucket, and when it was cold, she would then put that on the hot plate until it got warm, and then she had a big wash thing. And so she would pour the hot water in that, and then everybody would take a bath in that same water. And then she would pour that out, and then she had another bucket too, and that bucket was used to go to the bathroom, and then she would take that outside and dump that. So what we had to do was find a place for less than $225 that had a hot water heater in it. So we went out, and we were pretty fortunate to find one. And it backed up to a creek. So I think we all know why it was pretty cheap. A house backed up to a creek in Richmond, Rosenberg, which meant it flooded every time it rained. But she was so excited to have it because when you walk in the front door, first of all, this front door had a screen on it. And she was so excited. You had never seen anybody be so excited about a screen. And so she would open it, and it would close, and it would go bump, bump, bump. And she goes, "This is great. I know when people are coming and going," because the other house didn't have a screen. And so she just stood there, and she'd open it and close it and go bump, bump, bump. And she'd open it and close it and go bump, bump, bump. She was so thrilled. So you walked into the house, and then you walked into the hallway that went down in the bedroom. It was 1 bedroom there and 2 bedrooms here, and the bathroom. And then she went in the bathroom, and she just kept flushing the toilet. She was so excited to have a toilet that flushed. And so then you went into the kitchen, and the kitchen didn't have any appliances in it at all. And it had this big hole in the kitchen floor. And she said, "Do you think I can get a rug?" And I said, "I'm pretty sure I can find you a rug somewhere." And she goes, "Because I really don't want too many snakes coming in at night." And I'm thinking, I don't want any snakes coming in at night. So the girls were so excited. By this time, we still didn't have Brandy back, but we did have Charlita. And so she realized that she had a car and that the hallway sloped down so she could put the car at one end, and gravity would make it go down. So she'd get 2 cars and see which one would race the fastest down. So she had this house, and I went back to church, and I was telling people about Pearlie, and so different groups got together, and one family decided they wanted to get her an oven with a stove. And the women's Bible study got together, and they put in enough money to get a refrigerator. And we got her a washer and a dryer, and we got her a rug to go over the hole and a kitchen table to go on top of that. And we were able to get, through the church working so well together, to get her beds so they weren't on pallets. The girls were up off the floor. And the day that Brandy came home was such a huge celebration because she had been in foster care for about 6 weeks at this point in time. So the day came at the church that we were attending that had the big bazaar. Now, this church knows about bazaars. And this one, they had a gym, and so they had sold indoor and outdoor spaces for vendors, and it was a huge deal, and they had all of that good bazaar food, hot dogs and hamburger bun and hot dog buns and that good liquid cheese that you get at Sam's. You know, it's so nutritious. And all the nacho chips and just all of that kind of food and baked potatoes. And so they had gotten all of that and they had sold it, and at the end of the day there was still quite a bit left over. And so the women came and they said, "Do you think that your friend down in Richmond would like to have this food?" And I said, "Well, I'm sure she's not going to turn it away, and now that she actually has a freezer, she doesn't have to buy everything just that day. She's got places to do it." So the women got in the kitchen and they put everything up into little packages, and they put the date on it and what was in it. So there were 3 meals in each one and everything. So they said, "Can we go see where she lives?" And I'm thinking, well, I don't know, why not? I said, "I can't guarantee she's going to be there. And it's before cell phones, plus she couldn't have afforded a cell phone anyway. She didn't have a regular phone." So we get 3 cars full of people, and we go from Missouri City down 90 into Richmond, and we pull up at her house, and we have all of this food. And so she's got the front door open, and she comes out, and the screen door goes open, and you hear it go. And she goes, "Hi." And I said, "Hi." I said, "We brought you some food. Are you okay if we come in?" And she goes, "Oh, I would love for you to come see my house." And so there's about 12 of us, and we go into this house, and everybody's looking around, and they say, "We brought you some food." And so they're going into her kitchen and rearranging her kitchen and putting everything up for her and everything. And I noticed that she's gone over to Brandy, and she's whispered something to Brandy, and Brandy runs out the door, and you hear of the screen door. And so we're talking to Pearlie, and she's beyond herself. Never in her life has she seen this many people that want to help her. That's just not the way that she was raised. She didn't know what to do. She was just kind of overwhelmed. And I don't know how much time passed, maybe 8 minutes, maybe 12 minutes, I don't know. But all of a sudden, Brandy comes running in. Now, she's 12 years old. And she's got those really red cheeks that 12-year-olds get once they've been outside running, and that smell that kind of goes with the 12-year-olds when they've been outside running. And so she comes in, and you look at her, and she goes, "Mom, I did it. I did it." And her mom goes, "Okay." And her mom turns to me, and she said, "I know you told me this was for us for a month's worth of food." But she said, "This night, in this neighborhood, nobody is going to bed hungry." So she goes, "Come with me." So we went out and opened the screen door and looked out. And there were women and children coming from almost as far as you could see this way and as far as you could see this way. And there were some women that were so pregnant they had one child on their hip and they've got the toddler coming. There were others that had some kind of wagon that, of course, one wheel was lopsided. They were just coming from everywhere, and they had these threadbare blankets, and they laid them down all across the street and all across the ground and everything. And you would have thought we had brought her a Thanksgiving meal. But she got those hot dogs, and she got that liquid cheese and the nacho chips, and we had brought whatever drinks were left. And those people just sat, and they ate, and they ate, and they ate. And I couldn't help but think, we haughty little Lutheran women that had come down here thinking we were going to save the world. And this precious child of God with the 7 teeth in her mouth had taught us about sharing and had taught us about God, and let us sinners sit at the table with her, or on the ground as it be. And never in my life has a hot dog tasted so good, even better than when you get them at the baseball game. So I have sat in the midst of sinners and eaten a meal. And it was so good, and I felt so blessed. And I learned so much. And during that year that I worked with her, my son Luke was 4.5 years old, turned 5, was in kindergarten. And he went every single week with me down there. And he would ask me questions when we got in the car, like, why are they so excited that the cars go down in a hallway? Isn't a hallway supposed to be straight? And I said, because they've never had a hallway, much less one that went down or was straight. And to this day, he teaches every school that he teaches in or is a principal in is a school that has children that are on the lower socioeconomic spectrum, and that's the only place he will go. He's currently working on his PhD, and it is for the disadvantage of standardized tests for children that are raised not in socioeconomic white middle-class households. So Pearlie not only has changed my life, but I have seen what she has done in my sons at only 4.5 and 5 years old. So we never know who's going to teach us a lesson, and we never know where it's going to come from. But I just invite you, next time you eat a hot dog, talk about Pearlie, and if you can get one of those gut laughs out, oh, you will feel so much better. So to Pearlie, and may all God's people say, amen.